100 million engines, nearly 50 years of production, the backbone of every Corvette, every Camaro, every Chevy pickup truck for 3 decades. And somehow this same engine started the biggest lawsuit in American car history, shipped with a fuel injection system so bad that mechanics called it cease fire, and came with a distributor that melted itself under the water pump. The Chevy small block 350 is the most famous V8 on the planet. It also has more skeletons in its closet than any engine I have ever worked on, and I think it is time we talked about all of them. To understand why the 350 matters so much, you have to go back to 1952 when Chevrolet was losing. Cadillac and Oldsmobile already had overhead valve V8 engines. Ford was about to launch one, and Chevy was still selling an inline 6 from the 1930s that people called the stove bolt. The brand was dying in the youth market, and GM knew it, so they brought in a guy named Ed Cole. He had built tanks during Korea. He had worked on the Cadillac Vive 8, and his motto, this is a real quote, was "Kick the hell out of the status quo." Cole put together a small team of engineers, and they designed a completely new V8 in roughly 15 weeks. The first prototype ran 3 weeks after that, and GM was so confident they started building the factory equipment straight from the drawings before the engine had even been tested. They bet the entire future of the brand on drawings. But here is what made that bet pay off. The original 265 cubic inch small block weighed 531 pounds. That was over 100 pounds lighter than every other V8 on the market. It was even 40 pounds lighter than Chevy's own inline 6. And 2 dimensions that Ed Cole's team chose in 1955, the 4.40-inch bore center spacing and the bell housing bolt pattern, would survive unchanged for nearly 50 years. That means a 1996 Vortex cylinder head bolts directly onto a 1957 block. A Muncie 4-speed from a 1969 Camaro bolts to a 2001 truck engine. That single decision shaped American hot rod history more than anything else. The 350 itself showed up in 1967 as the L48 option in the Camaro SS, 295 horsepower. It spread to the Nova in 1968, and by 1969, it was in basically everything Chevrolet sold. The displacement climbed from 265 to 283 to 327 to 350 across 12 years. Same architecture, same bolt pattern, same basic block, just bigger bores and longer strokes every time. And by 1970, the 350 hit its peak. The LT1 solid lifter motor in the Corvette made 370 gross horsepower with forged internals, 4 bolt mains, and a Holley 780 carburetor. The NHRA factored it around 425 actual horsepower. It was almost certainly underrated from the factory because GM did not want insurance companies asking questions. That was the high watermark. Then the bottom fell out. By 1975, the Corvette 350 made 165 horsepower, catalytic converters, EGR valves, lower compression, and unleaded fuel. In 5 years, Chevrolet lost over 100 honest horsepower from the same engine. I worked on a 1975 with a 2-barrel carburetor once, and I am not exaggerating when I say my riding lawnmower felt more urgent. But that collapse is not the shocking part. The shocking part is what General Motors did to this engine while nobody was paying attention. In 1977, a guy named Joseph Siwek in Chicago took his brand new Oldsmobile Delta 88 in for an oil change. The mechanic tried to install the filter and it would not fit. He looked at the casting numbers on the block and realized it was not the Oldsmobile Rocket 350 that the window sticker promised. It was a Chevrolet 350. Siwek complained to the Illinois Attorney General and the whole thing blew up nationally. Turns out GM had been quietly sticking Chevy engines into Oldsmobiles because the Chevy factory was building more engines than it needed, and the Olds factory could not keep up. Roughly 75,000 Delta 88s, more than half the model's entire production run, got a Chevy 350 instead of the Rocket. And to hide it, GM ordered every engine across every division painted the same corporate blue, so you could not tell a Chevy orange block from an Olds gold one just by looking. GM's defense was incredible. They told Time magazine, and I am barely changing their words here, that if the buyer paid for a 350 cubic inch 170 horsepower engine, that is exactly what they got. They did not see the problem. 41 lawsuits, 33 state attorneys general, and a massive federal court case in Chicago later, they saw the problem. The final settlement in 1983 paid $3.4 million to the 12,500 people who refused to settle early. A synagogue in Skokie, Illinois was one of the named plaintiffs. You cannot make this stuff up. But here is the part that never gets talked about. That lawsuit killed the Pontiac 350, the Buick 350, and the Oldsmobile 350 in one stroke. All of which were completely different engines that shared nothing with the Chevy except displacement. GM made the Chevy small block the only engine for the entire company after that. The Chevy Mobile scandal did not destroy the 350. It accidentally crowned it king of everything. If you have been watching this channel for a while, you know I do not pull punches when a manufacturer screws up. And what Chevrolet did to the Corvette in 1982 might be the dumbest engineering decision in the 350's entire history. They called it Crossfire injection. Two Rochester throttle bodies bolted diagonally onto a low-profile intake manifold. It looked futuristic, but it was a disaster. The manifold ports were roughly 2/3 the size of the cylinder head ports, which meant the intake was choking the engine before it ever had a chance to breathe. 200 horsepower from 350 cubic inches. A 1962 Corvette with a 4-barrel carb was 2 full seconds faster to 60 miles an hour. Mechanics had 3 nicknames for it, and none of them were kind. Ceasefire, Misfire, and No Fire. All 3 names were earned. I talked to an older tech at a shop I worked at years ago who was there when these cars were new. He said they never ran right off the showroom floor. Cold start stumbles, flat spots at part throttle, stalling like the engine was trying to catch up to itself. And the 1984 model had something called a cold start module that was essentially a ticking time bomb designed to blow the ECM fuse after a set number of operating hours. There are 1984 Corvettes sitting in garages right now that will never start again because of that module, and the owner has no idea why. You want to know how bad the Crossfire really was? An aftermarket company made an intake manifold swap that dropped the quarter-mile time from 15.6 seconds to 14.3 seconds. Faster than the tuned port injection L98 that replaced it, the engine was never weak. GM just put a pillow over its face. But the 350 fought back. The recovery started with the L98 tuned port injection in 1985 and hit its stride with the Generation 2 LT1 in 1992. It had reverse flow cooling, which let them run 10.4-to-1 compression on pump gas, good for 300 horsepower in the Corvette. It was a brilliant engine, except for one thing, the Optispark distributor. I personally think this is the worst design decision in the history of the small block Chevy. General Motors needed a distributor that would fit under the new F-body low hood line. So they mounted it on the front of the engine, behind the harmonic balancer, directly underneath the water pump. A sensor with 360 tiny slots that track the exact position of the engine, sitting in the splash zone of a part that is actively pumping coolant. The early units from 1992 to 1994 were sealed and had no ventilation. The spark created a corrosive gas inside the cap that ate through the electrical contacts. Meanwhile, the water pump was leaking onto the housing, and the crank seal was slinging oil all over it. And when it failed, You lost spark completely, usually on a highway, usually in the rain, usually when you were late for something. One Firebird owner on the forums went through 4 Optispark distributors in 7,000 miles. A Corvette owner said he was on his 3rd unit and planned to sell the car when the repair was done. Replacement cost at the dealer ran $1,200 to $1,500 because you had to pull the water pump, the harmonic balancer, the serpentine belt, and the air pump bracket just to get to it. I have done this job, and I am not exaggerating when I say it made me want to throw a wrench through a window. When the LS showed up in 1997 with individual coil packs on the valve covers and nothing even resembling a distributor cap or rotor anywhere on the engine, the message was clear. General Motors never said the words we were wrong about Optispark, but the LS architecture says it for them. Now here is a disaster that is not General Motors' fault, but destroyed 350 engines by the thousands anyway. Around 2005, the oil industry, pushed by the EPA, started reducing zinc levels in motor oil. The additive is called ZDDP, and it basically coats the spots where the cam lobe and the lifter grind against each other. A flat tappet camshaft needs that film to survive. Without it, the lifter stops spinning against the cam lobe, welds itself to the surface, and the lobe goes flat, sometimes in minutes. People were spending $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on fresh 350 rebuilds with new cams and new lifters. They would fire the engine for break-in, and within 500 miles the cam was destroyed. I read a forum post from a guy who did everything by the book: comp cams, proper break-in oil, assembly lube on every lobe. The cam failed in 10 minutes. Another builder found metal shavings all over his dipstick after 30 minutes of runtime on a brand new short block. The engine was eating itself alive and nobody could figure out why at first. It took years for the community to piece together that the oil itself had changed. Joe Gibbs Racing ended up developing their own break-in oil because their professional engine shop kept wiping cams. Nobody ever filed a class action lawsuit because there were not enough classic car owners to make it worth a lawyer's time. The oil companies shrugged, the EPA shrugged, and the guys building 350s in their garages had to figure it out on their own. That right there is the entire 350 story in a nutshell. Something goes wrong. General Motors or the industry does not fix it. The community fixes it themselves. So here's my take, and some of you are going to disagree with me in the comments. The Chevy small block 350 was never the best V8 engine in America. Ford's 351 Windsor arguably had a better cylinder head design. The Olds Rocket 350 used stronger iron. GM's own LS that replaced it is better in every measurable way. Lighter, more powerful, more efficient, more reliable. The 350 won because Ed Cole's team made 3 decisions in 1955 that nobody else matched. They kept the bell housing pattern, the bore spacing, and the head bolt pattern exactly the same for 48 years. That meant every part ever made for a small block Chevy was a future part for every small block Chevy ever built. I would call that smart business more than smart engineering, and once every speed shop and parts catalog in America started stocking small block Chevy parts, nobody could stop that flywheel from spinning. You can still buy a running 350 long block out of a junkyard for $500. Bolt on a cam, an intake, headers, and a carburetor for under $1,000 more, and you are making 350 reliable horsepower. Stroke it to a 383 with a crank from a 400 block for under $2,000 in parts, and you are at 450. The LS can do all of this better and cheaper per horsepower. And guys still build 350s anyway, because a Holley double pumper and a set of chrome valve covers look right in a 1969 Camaro, and a plastic intake manifold with coil packs does not. If you saw our video on the LS versus small block debate, you already know how heated that argument gets. The 350 was never the best engine, but it was the most fixable one ever made. Every failure GM built into it had at least 3 aftermarket solutions and 10 forum threads explaining how to do it on a Saturday afternoon. That is the real legacy, not the 100 million units, not the horsepower numbers. The fact that America's mechanics looked at every mistake GM made and said, yeah, I can fix that. The engine that GM treated like a commodity. The engine that the community turned into a legend. If you found this one interesting, go watch our video on the only 3 Chevy trucks that are still legal to fix, because one of those trucks runs a version of this exact engine, and the reason it is disappearing from shops will make your blood boil. See you in the next one.